I asked my husband for space to date another man. I never expected him to actually leave. I am 31. I am a marketing professional who thought my predictable, hardworking husband would always be my safety net. When I developed a crush on a flashy coworker, I arrogantly asked my husband for space to explore it. I fully expected him to fight for me, cry, and desperately try to win me back. Instead, he didn't shed a single tear. He signed a new lease the next afternoon and moved out the following morning. The man I wanted left me in weeks, and now I am completely isolated, haunted by the crushing silence of the good man I foolishly threw away. Here is my side of the story. My name is Stephanie Hayes. I am 31 years old, and I work as a marketing director for a local lifestyle brand. I desperately want to tell you about the exact moment I ruined my entire life. It wasn't a screaming match. It wasn't a violent betrayal caught on camera. It was a single, arrogant sentence I said to my husband across a kitchen island on a Tuesday night. I told him I needed space to explore an emotional connection with another man. I said those words fully, confidently expecting him to break down. I expected him to cry. I expected him to argue. I expected him to desperately fight to win me back. Instead, he looked at me with absolutely dead, clear eyes. He told me he hoped the other man gave me exactly what I was looking for. And then he packed his entire life into a moving truck the very next morning. I absolutely did not see it coming. And that is the terrifying part one have to live with now. I played a stupid, manipulative game with a man who simply does not play games. I was married to Michael Hayes. He is 34 years old. He is a mechanical engineering technician. When this happened, he was in the grueling, final year of finishing his bachelor's degree at night. Michael is the kind of man that society tells you to marry. He is deeply grounded. He is incredibly loyal. He is terrifyingly disciplined. His entire life was rigidly structured around his job, his night classes, and the gym. We rented a beautiful townhouse together. He reliably paid the vast majority of the heavy bills, so I could comfortably live the social lifestyle my marketing career demanded. But over the last year, that beautiful stability started to feel incredibly suffocating to me. I absolutely know how spoiled and ungrateful that sounds. I know it. But I promise to be completely honest here. I was bored. I was 31 years old, and my husband was constantly buried behind textbooks and complex spreadsheets. I aggressively wanted spontaneous weekends. I wanted expensive dinners. I wanted to feel a desperate, burning passion. Michael just calmly wanted to finish his degree and build a secure, financial foundation. He looked at our life as a long-term investment. I looked at it as a waiting room. And that is exactly when I met Brett Lawson. Brett is 32 years old. He is a creative director at a flashy partner agency we contracted with. Brett was the exact, total opposite of Michael. He was incredibly spontaneous. He was loud. He paid intense, flattering attention to me. When we were in marketing meetings together, Brett made me feel incredibly seen. He made me feel dangerous. He made me feel completely alive. We started texting after hours. It wasn't physical. I arrogantly drew a hard, technical line at physical cheating. As if emotional infidelity was somehow a lesser crime. But the texts became deeply intimate. We complained about our partners. We talked about what ifs. Brett casually told me he didn't believe in treating life like a chore. That one sentence perfectly validated every single, toxic resentment I was currently harboring against my husband's grueling study schedule. I planned the confrontation with Michael meticulously. I had been aggressively picking small fights with him for months. Complaining that he was always tired. complaining that he was never fun anymore. I was subconsciously trying to build a solid paper trail of neglect, so I wouldn't look like the villain when I finally dropped the bomb. That Tuesday night, I poured a large glass of red wine. I waited for him to walk through the front door from his night class. He walked in at 9 o'clock, looking exhausted, carrying a heavy backpack. I didn't even let him put it down. I looked at him, and I coldly said, "I've met someone else. And I need space." I had completely written his script for him in my head. I thought he would be shocked. I thought he would desperately ask who it was. I thought he would promise to drop his classes. Promise to take me on a massive vacation. I thought my demand for space would instantly jolt him out of his boring routine, and force him to actively compete for my love. He didn't do a single one of those things. He didn't raise his voice a single decibel. He just looked at me, and asked exactly how long it had been developing. I rolled my eyes. I defensively told him it didn't matter, because nothing physical had actually happened. I aggressively told him he had been emotionally distant anyway. I practically handed him the blame on a silver platter. And he simply refused to take it. He looked at me with a terrifyingly blank expression. And he said, "I hope he gives you the piece you're looking for." It felt like he had just thrown a glass of ice water directly in my face. I panicked. I asked him why he always had to be so extreme. I explicitly told him I just needed time to explore my feelings. That was the exact, toxic phrase I used. Explore my feelings. I wanted the absolute security of my husband paying the rent in the townhouse. While I safely went out and tested whether Brett Lawson was actually a better upgrade. I thought Michael loved me so much, he would just blindly accept being put on layaway. I was dead wrong. He asked me, point blank, if I planned to keep seeing Brett while I explored. I hesitated. I tried to deflect. I said I didn't want to feel controlled. And I watched the exact moment Michael's heart permanently close to me. It was like watching a heavy steel vault door click shut. He didn't scream. He didn't call me names. He simply said he would absolutely not participate in that arrangement. And then he quietly walked upstairs to the guest bedroom. I honestly thought he was just posturing. I woke up the next morning, and he was already gone. I went to my marketing job, fully expecting my phone to blow up with long, desperate text messages. I expected apologies. I expected him to beg for couples counseling. My phone was completely silent the entire day. When I finally walked into the townhouse that evening, Michael was sitting at the dining room table. He had a single manila folder in front of him. My stomach completely dropped. "What did you do?" I asked him. He looked at me with zero emotion. "I signed a lease. I am moving out tomorrow morning." I literally laughed out loud. It was a panicked, breathless laugh. I thought he was bluffing. I told him he was insane. I told him I just needed space, not abandonment. He looked at me, and he delivered a sentence that still haunts me every single night. Space from a marriage does not look like sleepovers with another man, while your husband waits in the next room. I desperately tried to make him the bad guy. I called him dramatic. I called him insecure. He just calmly opened the folder. He showed me a pristine spreadsheet. He had calculated his exact half of the remaining rent. He explicitly told me he would auto-transfer the money every month so I wouldn't be financially exposed. He had mathematically planned his entire exit in under 8 hours. While I was at work waiting for a desperate apology text, he was signing legal documents. I asked him if this was a trial separation. He looked me dead in the eye. This is me permanently removing myself from a situation where I am being treated as an option. The next morning, at exactly 9 o'clock, a moving truck pulled up. 2 men walked into my house. I stood paralyzed in the kitchen, with my arms crossed, watching them dismantle my entire life. They took his heavy desk. They took his textbooks. They took the mattress he had owned before we ever met. I tried one last time to manipulate him. I softened my voice. I told him he didn't have to rigidly prove a point. That we could just talk about this like adults. He calmly reminded me that we had talked. And that my final answer was that I wanted the freedom to explore another man. He told me he was absolutely not interested in being structural support for his own replacement. By noon, he was completely gone. He left his keys on the counter. He wished me well. And he walked out the front door without looking back once. I spent the next 2 weeks in an absolute state of delusion. I texted him. Long, scrolling paragraphs. I accused him of not valuing me enough to fight for me. I aggressively blamed him for making me feel lonely in the marriage. He responded exactly twice. His responses were completely cold. Completely clinical. He told me that fighting for someone, and competing with someone, are 2 entirely different things. He explicitly stated that introducing a third person was my choice, and he was simply responding to the data. After that, he stopped responding to anything that wasn't a utility bill. I lied to our mutual friends. I told them we were just taking a break because his engineering classes were too stressful. I desperately needed to control the public narrative. But the terrifying truth was, I had zero control over absolutely anything. I started officially dating Brett Lawson. I finally had exactly what I arrogantly asked for. I had my space. I had my spontaneous nights out. I had my expensive wine bars. And it was an absolute, unmitigated disaster. Brett was incredibly fun for exactly 3 weeks. And then reality hit. Brett didn't want a serious relationship. Brett didn't want to help pay bills. Brett was terrible at texting back. Brett was always mysteriously busy on weekends. The man who made me feel so alive in a marketing meeting was a complete ghost in real life. He was flashy attention, with absolutely zero structural consistency. I had traded a man who built a literal spreadsheet to protect my credit score during a divorce. For a man who couldn't even remember to text me that he was running late for dinner. I was completely, utterly humiliated. About a month after Michael moved out, the panic truly set in. I finally called him instead of texting. I asked if we could meet for coffee. I told him I needed clarity. I humiliatingly admitted to my own husband that things with Brett had completely fizzled out. I admitted that Brett was inconsistent. I essentially admitted that my branch swing had broken. And I desperately needed my safety net back. I told him the absolute truth. I didn't think he would actually leave. Michael listened to me cry. He didn't interrupt. He didn't gloat. He just calmly told me that trust had permanently changed shape. He said he deeply respects effort inside a commitment. But he absolutely does not respect effort, after exit strategies have already been explored. He told me he was officially filing for divorce the following week. I snapped. I got incredibly defensive. I accused him of erasing me. Of acting superior to normal human emotions. He just calmly replied, "You stepped out." I stepped forward. Then he hung up the phone. And he permanently blocked my number. He blocked me on absolutely every single social media platform. He closed every single door. I was completely locked out of the life I had arrogantly taken for granted. The divorce was blindingly fast. Because we lived in a no-fault state, and we had no children, it was purely administrative. I tried to reach out through mutual friends. I tried to send one last, desperate email admitting I missed his stability. He replied with one single sentence. "I hope you find what you are actually looking for." And then he disappeared. I found out months later that he was offered a massive internship in a different city. He packed up his apartment and completely relocated. He finished his engineering degree. He got a massive salary bump. He upgraded his entire life. And he did it completely without me. He didn't post revenge photos. He didn't smear my name to our friends. He just executed a flawless, silent, logistical exit. I moved out of the beautiful townhouse when the lease ended. I couldn't afford it on my own. I now live in a much smaller, cramped apartment closer to downtown. I date occasionally. But it's exhausting. Every time a guy flakes on a date, or leaves me on read, I physically feel sick to my stomach. Because I remember the man who used to make me coffee every single morning without ever being asked. The boring man who was actually just incredibly reliable. I thought Michael's absolute devotion meant I held all the power in the relationship. I arrogantly thought his patience was a form of passivity. I thought I could safely treat him as a reliable option, while I selfishly explored a flashy distraction. I was catastrophically wrong. He absolutely loved me. But he loved his own self-respect significantly more. And the absolute most devastating part of this entire nightmare is that I absolutely cannot blame him. I asked for space. And he gave me an entire galaxy of it. And now, I am completely suffocating in the dark. That was Stephanie's side, a woman who arrogantly mistook her husband's quiet loyalty for weakness, only to realize too late that the most disciplined men are the ones who never look back. Stephanie thought she could play a manipulative game. She asked Michael for space to explore a flashy coworker, fully expecting Michael to beg, cry, and compete for her attention. Instead, Michael recognized the disrespect immediately. He signed a new lease, moved out the very next day, and completely removed himself from the equation. When her new romance quickly crashed and burned, Stephanie tried to return to her safety net, only to find that Michael had already filed for divorce, blocked her number, and upgraded his entire life without her. What do you think? Did Stephanie deserve to be completely abandoned the very next day, or should Michael have stayed and fought for his marriage? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Subscribe to Silence Speaks for more stories about loud arrogance meeting quiet consequences. New stories every day. #the backup plan.